And I think Kim has his finger on the pulse in terms of the rationality of business being a sort of at odds with making great art long term. And there are certain businesses that are supposed to be irrational and supposed to be full of crazy bets and crazy risks. And that's the way it has worked for the last 100 years. And I think what we've seen is that it's just becoming harder to monetize those risks when they work. And so people are not really taking those risks anymore.
Yep. And this is a little reason to sort of bemoan and be bad at Hollywood, by the way, about the demise of the cable bundle, right? It was this fantastic middle ground where back when you only had broadcast TV, because there was only a few of them, they catered to the bland middle, right? And so you had these,
right.
these sitcoms that like are just, kind of crappy, sort of in retrospect. Then sort of cable comes along, and it was like sufficiently targeted, and also had this business model of where if you made something popular, people really liked it. It didn't need to be a lot of people; it just need to be enough that they would go somewhere else. They would go to Dish if they couldn't get Mad Men or whatever it was. There's only like 1 million people watched or something like that, and then you could raise your rates. And by the way, customers weren't paying that raise in rates. The cable company was. And so eventually, it would trickle down to the consumer. But it was so obfuscated from where it came from that it gave just this surplus of money and this incentive to create really good stuff. And that's where you got the golden age of television from, the mid 90s to the mid 2010s. And all these great shows and amazing sort of outcomes that happen. Now, today, the problem with streaming is you have that direct connection between the customer and the delivery service. So there's a very palpable sense of raising prices, but also your motivation is all about customer acquisition and preventing churn and all these sorts of things in this bit where you can go crazy spending on something that's only going to get a sliver of people because you can sort of, get the cost of it through the system in a way that no one sort of sees or understands or realizes. That's gone. It's very transparent. The internet brings transparency, and it turns out we don't always like transparency. It's actually kind of nice when stuff's muddled. It's actually kind of nice when, if you want to be a newspaper columnist, you go to your local newspaper and it's only delivered in the geographic area. Then we have a bunch of columnists all over the country. And sure, the great ones will get sort of syndicated. Maybe they'll sort of get around a little bit more. But, and if you're really good, you might make it a Sports Illustrated and you might actually get sort of reach the whole country. That's sort of like, but you get to the internet, everyone publishes, everyone's online. And it turns out we all end up reading the same stuff. There's only the very high end. And to the extent there's new, interesting things, they're much smaller scale. And so that's okay for text. Obviously, I'm biased because you can get stuff like Stratechery, right? It's a lot harder to get really great TV shows or movies if everything is nichified, just because the costs are still very significant.
When you're spending, like Netflix spent a ton of money on Third Eye, on Three Body Problem, and Max is spending a ton of money on House of Dragons. Amazon spent a ton of money on the Lord of the Rings show, and none of it is all that great these days. And so again, people are willing to make the investments, but when you're making a concerted effort to appeal to everyone in the world, that tends to be at odds with what creates truly great art. And so it's just either big budget stuff that's crappy at the top, or tiny projects that can still be good and compelling. And that's one of the joys of the last 10 and 15 years, is discovering shows like that.